a new documentary shines a spotlight on the forgotten war against the Nuba people and the American doctor providing life-saving care. A look inside NATO's plan to step up its efforts to stabilize Africa.
What you really got to say? A pretty girl with bumper and a little waist.
And in our Music Makers segment, singer, songwriter, and producer Amare. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory and this is Africa 54. We begin tonight looking into the painful story of an oppressed people. With the continuing violence in Syria, the brutality of the Boko Haram in Nigeria, and now the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi Arabia embassy of Istanbul, the world seems to have forgotten about the people of the Nuba Mountains. This is where for 7 years Sudanese President al-Bashir has been waging war on his own people. Now, viewers Caravan Dam attended a screening of a film about the plight of the Nuba people and reports from Washington.
So this is the reality of life here.
Nearly every other day, Russian-made Antonov planes bombed unarmed civilians, severing limbs and crushing torsos, burning small thatched roof houses, and crops that would have fed the Nuba people in this remote border area. Most of the medical staff of international aid agencies and health clinics have long since left the Nuba Mountains. But one doctor has stayed.
I've chosen to live in Africa. I like that idea of staying in one place and becoming part of the community.
Dr. Tom Katina is surgeon, OBGYN, and pediatrician at Mother of Mercy Hospital, the only hospital for hundreds of miles. And so Dr. Katina does what he can to save the lives of hundreds of men, women, and children caught up in the battle between President Bashir and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement North rebel fighters. Dr. Katina wouldn't be known to the world were it not for his close friend from college, filmmaker Ken Carlson.
I found out that he was in great need in the Nuba Mountains 5-6 years ago, and found out that he was in desperate need of aid, and decided to reach out to him, and we were able to put $102,000 together and put a truck with supplies and vaccines and send it up to him just in time to keep the doors open of the hospital. And so at that point in time, back in 2013, I realized this would be a great story to tell.
Carlson, a recent nominee for the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival, says he was drawn to find out for himself why his friend was so passionately committed to the people of the Nuba Mountains.
He's furious. He's furious that these innocent human lives are being destroyed, and families are being splintered for no reason.
Dr. Katina awakens at 5:50 without an alarm each morning, marches to the chapel where he says a rosary, drinks tea, then walks straight to the hospital for another long day. In one scene, Dr. Katina sees a man who has just had his nose blown off by shrapnel.
It'll heal, you know, to wait for it to heal over, but to try to get the nose back is something beyond what I can do.
The Heart of Nuba screening at the National Cathedral drew dozens of donors, activists, and diaspora to the storied Gothic building in Washington, D.C. Nathaniel Nyok, a lost boy from South Sudan who ran barefoot for 5 days to escape the fighting in his hometown of Bor, South Sudan, says one part of the film gave him chills.
Seeing the kids running from the Antonov and then jumping into that one hole to hide, that's what I used to do.
Nasima, a Sudanese nurse who works alongside her husband, Dr. Katina, in the Nuba Mountains, describes what it's like to be in the operating theater when you come under attack by your own government.
No one comes out, but in the wards, people always run to the first hall. You understand me? People run to the first hall with patients who are able to run.
In January, President Bashir signed a 4-month ceasefire with the SPLM-North rebels, but ground attacks continue. The International Criminal Court charged Bashir with war crimes and crimes against humanity years ago, but he has eluded arrest. Bashir doesn't care about the Nuba people. He does care about what's underneath the people, oil and minerals. Carlson is raising donations for Mother of Mercy Hospital by making this documentary. For VOA News, I'm Carol Van Dam in Washington.
Well, Kenya's Employment and Labor Relations Court is temporarily barring the Kenya Aviation Workers Union from boycotting ahead of Kenya Airways' inaugural direct flight to the United States on Sunday. The union had issued a directive on October the 17th urging its members to stay away from the maiden flight until Kenya Airways commits to conclude their collective bargaining agreement. Now, the court on Friday ordered the union not to suspend services pending hearing and determination of the suit filed by Kenya Airways. The airline's CEO, Sebastian Mikolz, filed the petition with the Employment and Labor Division. The union was also protesting the released duty roster of the New York flight, arguing that workers will be working for more than 15 hours required. On Monday, the aviation workers said they would strike over the airline's failure to agree with its employees on special pay and working conditions for the long-haul flight. As Zimbabwe's economy continues to struggle, businesses are increasingly demanding US dollars over the country's bond notes, a banknote currency Zimbabwe began printing 2 years ago to ease cash shortages. Columbus Mavunga has more from Harare.
Zimbabwe businesses and service providers have started asking for payment in US dollars instead of local currency bond notes. Dr. Ahmed Bilal Shah, who runs a medical center in one of Harare's poorest suburbs, is still accepting payments in the local bond notes, but says he has to make tough decisions in order to keep the surgery afloat.
If I will not replace my stock after within a 1 month time, I had to close my surgery.
There are no US dollars in Zimbabwe's banks, so Shah says he has to turn to the black market. This week, police arrested close to 200 black market dealers in a crackdown aimed at curbing the blossoming currency trade in the country. The country has been without an official currency for a decade. It relied instead on the US dollar, British pound and South African rand. But after those currencies began difficult to get, Harare began printing the bond notes.
The only thing to do, in my view, is to demonetize the bond note. I was one person who was against the bond note from the word go, and I was very clear. This bond note will depreciate and will create havoc.
Zimbabwe's Finance Minister Mutule Ncube insists that the bond notes will remain at par with the US dollar, though on the market it continues to lose value, with the bond note now trading 4 against 1 US dollar. And business say if they continue using it, they will go bankruptcy and close shop. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
From uncontrolled migration in the north to the rise of Islamist terrorist groups to political instability in places such as Libya, Mali and Somalia, African security issues continue to pose a threat to Europe and the globe. NATO's command senior enlisted leader for Allied Command Operations, Command Sergeant Major David Pitek, spoke exclusively with VOA Pentagon correspondent Kalabab on NATO efforts to help stabilize the continent.
Africa has grown in importance for NATO. We've seen allies expanding their role with the African Union in 2016. Why is Africa more important now?
Well, that's a great question. Let me rewind back a little bit and say that NATO cooperation with the African Union started back in 2005 with the establishment of the liaison office in Addis Ababa, and it's been growing steadily ever since. One of the main reasons why we started expanding the cooperation is because we as NATO, through our strategic direction south, are recognized of potential problems or potential negative effects that are coming from the African continent, and it's affecting the European continent too.
You think of the migration crisis. What are you working on now to help stem that problem?
We just established about a year and a half ago what we call a NATO Strategic Direction South Hub at Joint Force Command Naples. Now that hub is our way of reaching out and making sure we connect and we coordinate all the activities with all the organizations in theater that are willing to share info with NATO.
And how has that been working?
It's been working actually very well. I mean, one of the things that we were lacking in the past was the info flow between different players in the region. Now with the establishment of this hub, this kind of opened doors to us to connect not just with the military assets in the region, but also with the non-governmental organizations or civilian organizations that are out there in Africa doing work to share that and better coordinate. So we've been seeing a steady progress. You mentioned that in 2016 in Warsaw Summit, we expanded that even more. Soon enough, you will see the NATO framework for the South, which should even more expand our coordination with the African continent.
NATO has a huge role with the African Union, which oversees AMISOM. I know that a lot of these countries were wanting to pull out of Somalia. They didn't. They decided in March not to. How critical is it for them to remain in Somalia to help fight off al-Shabaab?
Well, first of all, it's critical from the aspect of keeping the stability in the country. Now, I have to clarify, NATO's involvement in Somalia is only by providing strategic airlift and sea lift for the forces deployed. We don't have any NATO forces in Somalia, but supporting that through the sea lift and airlift, we want to make sure that sustainability of the security situation is there. If NATO will be involved in future more directly in Somalia, I don't know, that's up to political leadership to decide, but projecting stability is one of the key roles of NATO. Now that, again, it goes back, how is the situation in Africa affecting the rest of the world? Because it's not an African problem, it's an international problem that's affecting nations across the globe.
So how involved is NATO with some of the planning of the African Union's role in Somalia? I know you said that operations-wise, they only deal with the lifts, but there's a lot involved with the planning, right?
Well, that's the key task of this liaison office in Addis Ababa. Their main role is to link up with the African Union and provide support and SMEs in planning, operational planning. So that is the key element. Whether it be by physically deployed there and providing that on location, or bringing those African officers and NCOs and leaders to NATO to provide that through education, through training, to direct engagements with NATO leadership. But it's mainly focused to operational planning and supporting operational planning.
Because it is October, and a year ago this month, there was a massive attack in Somalia. Considering the context of a year ago, is it still valuable to NATO to continue to support the government forces in Somalia?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all about maintaining a secure and safe environment. And again, addressing the problem at the source is the only way to do it. When we address the problem at the far end, then we actually have to deal with a lot of more consequences than just supporting the nation that needs support in a theater. So absolutely, it's valuable.
Well, that was VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb speaking with NATO Command Sergeant David Patek. Well, at least 9 Muslim candidates are seeking public office in November 6th in the U.S. Midwestern state of Minnesota. One of them is Fadusa Jama, the first Somali American to run for city council in Mankato, just over an hour's drive southwest of Minneapolis. Jama says she will bring the much-needed perspective of an immigrant to the council if elected. VOA's Zahra Abdi Ahmed has a story.
Fadusa Jama was a girl when she moved with her Somali family from a Kenyan refugee camp to Mankato. Later, she founded the nonprofit Somali Community Barwaco organization, which informs immigrants about jobs, education, and health care.
I set forth to break barriers and to build bridges of compassion and understanding. So I'm a long way from being a politic. I'm more of an advocate for people.
Now, as a candidate in the nonpartisan race to represent Ward 3, the 33-year-old is pushing for more affordable housing and to amplify diverse voices in the predominantly white city of 42,000.
If I'm not spoken for, if I'm not represented, imagine how many more people that feel the same way, right? So it's our responsibility to come to the table. It's our responsibility to make sure our voices is heard.
Jama is challenging incumbent Mark Frost. The pharmacist told the local Mankato Free Press that during his 16 years on the council, the city has had a phenomenal run with an increase in population, development, and jobs. In campaigning door-to-door, Jama has learned more about issues important to Mankato residents. She also has encountered resentment of foreigners and Muslims, possibly heightened by the hijab she wears. An elderly white man even spat on Jama.
I personally faced hatred, and I personally faced Islamophobia. The worst that anybody can do to me is to spit on me, and that's what happened. My responsibility is to not take it personal. He has a problem with who I am, and the best I can do is put myself forward.
She wants her Mankato neighbors to understand and accept Muslims. Her biggest supporter was her father, who died in August. He encouraged her to run for city council.
My dad was my backbone. May he rest in peace. He was the one that said, your voice, your perspective and your voice matters, and to do it.
Jama also is inspired by Ilhan Omar, the first Somali American elected to the Minnesota state legislature. That was in 2016. Now, with the November 6th election, the Democrat could become the first Somali American to represent Minnesota in the U.S. Congress.
She's my personal hero. When I think I can't do something, or when I feel like I will not be able to accomplish something because of the hate that I receive, I think to myself, I'm like, you're just at the local level, she's at a national level. I encourage the ones in Somalia to do the same thing that we're doing here.
Well, maybe not. Women hold roughly a third of the seats in the Somali parliament's lower chamber, but less than a fifth in the comparable U.S. House of Representatives. Jama says she hopes for more varied representation in public office, starting with her own election.
I set myself a big goal by telling our state rep that I'm going to run for his position in 4 years. And so now I have to take the action steps on how I'm going to get there. And that is to get elected in the city council. And that's where you learn the basics.
For Sarah Abdi Ahmed in Mankato, Minnesota, I'm Carol Gunsberg, VOA News.
Well, Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve has been named Africa's leading national park for 2018, the 25th World Travel Awards. It's the 6th time in a row the iconic safari destination has won the honor, overcoming competition from other African nations, including Tanzania's Serengeti National Park and Kruger National Park in South Africa. The event, dubbed the travel industry's equivalent of the Oscars, took place in Durban, South Africa. Tourists go to the Masai Mara seeking the experience of a lifetime. In this latest achievement recognizes that their expectations are being met by the services and infrastructure in place, as well as the flourishing wildlife that is the star attraction. Kenya has positioned itself at the forefront of African tourism following a series of challenges, including mismanagement, mushrooming of lodges, poor infrastructure, tax evasion and poaching, which authorities say they have been fixing for the last 6 years. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. So join the conversation on Facebook. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, singer, songwriter and producer Amari. But first, a look at Friday's headlines.
Not that they are lacking the skills, actually.
Well, a short time ago, a U.S. Justice Department official announced that authorities have detained one person in connection with a series of 12 mail suspicious packages addressed to prominent Democrats and other critics of President Donald Trump's administration. Federal officials are planning to announce more information at a news conference about 2 hours. Meanwhile, VOA's Laditza Hoke reports that many are blaming President Trump's rhetoric for inciting violence.
Trump has condemned the packages as an attack on U.S. democracy, but in a tweet he also blamed the mainstream media for what he called the anger we see today. Trump has been criticized himself for using offensive language that many say encourages violence.
There's a difference between aggressive, hard-fought issues and the language around that, and trying to incite people to violence.
Trump's press secretary Sarah Sanders on Thursday insisted the media are unfair to Trump.
Yesterday, the very first thing that the president did was come out and condemn the violence. The very first thing your network did was come out and accuse the president of being responsible for it. That is not okay.
The suspicious packages intercepted so far have all looked similar and contained similar homemade devices. Many of them were addressed to individuals in the New York City area.
This is clearly an effort to terrorize people politically, to choose people for political purposes and attack them because of their beliefs.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said the police are investigating the packages and searching for the person or group who made them. Experts say makers of rudimentary explosives such as pipe bombs are relatively easy to identify.
Bomb makers usually have a signature in the way they construct a bomb. They usually crimp the wires the same way, use the same bomb-making material, and the construct of the entire device has identical features, local similarities, and you can tie it together. The envelopes they use to mail them.
In addition, experts say culprits leave microscopic skin flakes, traces of saliva or hairs in the material they handle, and these help identify the suspect. About 10 suspicious packages in yellow manila envelopes have been intercepted so far. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, Lancaster University researchers say the living room of the future they have created is not just a peek at what could await us as the tech revolution gathers pace. The room features items common to living rooms the world over, such as lights, speakers, chairs, or curtains, work together to create a personal audiovisual experience. Now, the data gathered could include your previous viewing habits, books you've ordered via an online retailer, or the fact that your travel card indicates you've just returned home from a day in the office. Using the data, television shows could be custom-tailored, including different endings based on individual mood and taste. Well, lastly, superhero stars, wars, and even food are some of the most popular inspirations for pet outfits. In Los Angeles this Halloween, dressing up and celebrating this spooky day is big business in the United States, with stores reporting steady growth over the past decade. A survey by the National Retail Federation for 2018 shows nearly 20% of people celebrating Halloween plan to dress their pets in a costume, with total spending expected to be just under $500 million. This year, the most popular animal costumes include pumpkins, hot dogs, bumblebees, and devils. The survey shows millennials are most likely to put their dog in a costume, and that's what's trending today. Well, it's Music Makers Friday, and today Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell introduces us to a colorful artist with a smooth voice. Heather, over to you.
I'm sitting here with a rising star from Ghana and the U.S. Her name is Amare, And we're in East Legon, where she lives, and we're having a chit-chat about who is Amare.
What you really got to say? A pretty girl with bumper and a little waist. Skin so smooth, I mean it's hard to look away.
I am a singer, a songwriter, a producer, and the message that I'm carrying across is more about self-expression. You see, my hair is blue, so
I do see that. It's sparkly also.
Yes, it's glittering as well. And I always have different hair colors. So one thing that I'm really trying to push across is about freedom and just freedom of expression, and doing that through song and doing that through the way that I dress and the way that I express myself in other ways and in other parts of my career as well.
So what is your most exciting, most recent work?
So right now, I have my EP out. It's called Passion Fruit Summers, and we have this fantastic song on it. It's called Fluid, and we have a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous video that we just shot and put out a month ago. So I think right now that's the most exciting thing that I have out, and that's what people are really gravitating to as well.
See, I didn't think I'd see the day where I shed all this water away. You had me plummeting like anger, babe. You had me drowning in your fountain shape.
What is Fluid about?
Fluid is an interesting metaphor. It's a metaphor. I feel like I want to leave that up to the audience to listen and then to judge.
You say that freedom of expression is really important to you. What kind of experiences have shaped that desire to sing and write about that topic?
I've always been the rebel in my family. Traditional African kids should not be able to color their hair the way that, they color their hair. Being a kid in a family, like, one thing is that nobody wants their kid to be a musician. So I really pushed the boundaries in my family, and I started working in a studio when I was 17 years old. And I remember my parents being so against it. But as I pushed and as I showed them that I'm taking over my independence, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make sure that I do it to the best of my ability. And that resonates in my songwriting as well.
I don't want to waste my time on mistakes.
Can you just sample a teeny bit of one song a cappella? Your voice is so beautiful.
Okay.
I'm feeling so fluid, yeah. Baby, let go. You can do it. Just do it. Fluid.
I love that voice. I love that voice. So what's next for you? After this EP, are you going to put out some more videos, or are you working on a whole entirely different project?
Definitely videos. We have some amazing videos that we went out to LA to shoot. And then during that time, I'm probably thinking some singles and some collaborations with other artists, and then go underground and work on my next project, work on my album.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you too. I appreciate you taking the time out for this.
This is Heather Maxwell, host of Music Time in Africa, under starry skies in East Legon, Ghana, with Amare.
Wow, so fluid. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a great weekend.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When you slip, you fall down. But how does something slip from your mind?
Slip one's mind.
Let's listen to Anna and Jonathan.
Look at this beautiful cake I made for the dinner party.
Oh no, is that tonight?
Yes? Didn't you make something?
No, it totally slipped